the Market Stats member portal. And this is the entry point for the statistics. There's a lot of different things here. And your first question is going to be, how do you access that? That's actually a button on your Clarity dashboard. And I apologize, I didn't bring that picture up on the screen, so I will find that before the end of the session and show it to you. But that's how you can access it. It's right on the top row there. It says Domus Analytics. And when you click on that, you're going to get to this member portal. Now, Domus is a collection of dashboards. As you can see, there's several across here, and we're going to be going over all of them today. This is because you're going to have different needs depending on what you're doing. And all of the data is based on the same underlying data set. So you should get the same answer no matter what you're using. But depending on who you're talking to and the story you're trying to tell and that sort of thing, may choose to use one dashboard over the other. So we're going to go through all of them. I'm going to start here right on the left-hand side with the market infographic. These go from the most simple to the most complex, and they all have the same kind of functionality. So let's get started here and look at that one. Now, right away, you can see it's a very high-level dashboard. It's got a handful of the metrics that are really of interest to most people: the median sales price, the closed sales. I've got some percentage comparisons down here, and that's the first thing you're going to see that you can do. If you look up in the top corner here, it's got a little toggle switch, and it says compared to the same month of the prior year, which is where it's set right now, or to the prior month. So if you wanted to look at maybe what happened last month, actually the stats we're looking at are for July. So if you wanted to see what it was in June at the beginning of the summer, you just click that little toggle switch. And my stats stayed the same, but that percentage changed. And then you can click back and get back to that year over year. So you will see this toggle switch. That's how you use that. The next thing you'll see is there are these little upside down triangles. Now, every time you see these on any of the dashboards, that means it's a filter that you can interact with. So I can click on July here, and you'll get the whole drop down of all the months that are available to you. And I'm just using my mouse to drag down and up across here. You could also use the up and down arrows on your keyboard. I also have one of those filters for my property type, which you can see is defaulted to single family residence, and a few of the areas on here. Now, with the areas, the interesting thing here is that this infographic is also on the Gallatin Realtors website. So if I pop over to that website here, you will see this is on your market stats page, and I've got that. But there is one of those areas down here that is missing. I can click on this. It'll bring me to the page there. Should bring me to the page. It seems to be taking a moment. There we go. So when I click on that one on that website, it doesn't have that third area filter. That's because this is publicly available. So anybody going to the Gallatin Realtors website will have access to this. And they're not going to know your areas as well as you do. So that is not visible here if you were to send somebody over there to see it, but you as members do have access to those minor areas. So you can go through and you can click and say, maybe you want to see what happened in Gallatin and Deer Lodge, and add that in there. And you can see all those numbers just changed. And then you have your areas down below. So whatever you are trying to get to, you have the answer right here for you. Now, all of the dashboards, although they are online and interactive, they can also be printed. You have several different options here. At the bottom, I've got this printer button. That's the first one. And this is going to function exactly like the printing function of whatever browser you're using. I happen to be using Chrome, so this is what the Chrome one looks like. If you're using Firefox, you get a little bit different. The one that's a little bit weird is Safari. I apologize. I love Mac, but Safari is the buggiest one. It doesn't listen as well to our instructions where we say, hey, print this on one page for me. So if you're using Safari, you might need to adjust the scale before you can print this out. Now, I happen to have this set to save as a PDF as my printing destination. That should be a default for for all of your browsers. They do have the ability to print as PDF from there, or you can switch that to an actual printer and maybe print that out for yourself and bring it to an open house or share with your clients. But you can print that like that. I'll cancel out here. We also did put a single click PDF on some of these dashboards. Most of them have that, so you can click one click away and that'll download a PDF. And right next to that, you can also click and get to an image. So those will all download to wherever you have set your automatic downloads to go. Typically, it's a folder called downloads. So unless you've changed it, that's probably where it is. Now, I want to talk about the image for just a minute because there's another way to get images of this. Let's say you want to post this to your social media platform of choice, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn. You can actually get to a really quick little way of doing this. And it also means you don't have to have the entire infographic. If you do the download here with the image, it downloads the entire one. But let's say you just want to share something like the median sales price. There is built-in functionality in Windows to take a little screenshot of this. So for Windows, it is your Windows key, the Shift button, and the S. And then that sort of creates a little dimming of the screen here. And now I can use my mouse to just grab this median sales price. And now I've got a little image of what happened, median sales price, and what my percentage change was. And I can just paste that right into my status and then take a minute or two to write a little comment about it and say, hey, it's still going up compared to last year. So you still have a good opportunity if you need to sell your house. So I really love that one. That's actually one of my favorite little tricks to do. So you don't have to print out the whole thing. You can just grab whatever part of the screens you want. All right, that one's the infographic. So I'm going to move right over next to that to my market review. And this one is going to be another step up in complexity, but you can see it's still not very complex. You just have more information. I added a couple more metrics on here, and we also added a spark line. And this one shows you both of your comparison timelines. So rather than deciding between month over month or year over year, you've got both of them. So my metric is here on the right compared to the prior month, and all the way over at the end is compared to the prior year. And then I have that trend line of what happened during that year, month by month. Now, this is actually my favorite dashboard. And one of the things I really love about it is that you can see with a trend line here, there's also a horizontal dashed line across each one of these. And that line represents the metric value that you see here on the right for the current month. So I don't even have to move my mouse over to see what those actual values are. I can tell where we are today compared to where we were at this same time last year. So that's just a real quick little visual cue that you have a ton of information here for you. You can also see at the top, we have those same filters that we saw on the infographic. And we did the same trick with giving you, the members, access to that minor area when you are accessing it through that portal page, versus if we went back to the Gallatin Realtors website here, I've got it down here right below the infographic. You can see that same area is missing. So that we're not giving that out to anybody in the public who doesn't know your numbers. This one also has up at the top that same toggle switch, but rather than doing that comparison of a timeline, month over month, year over year, we have the ability to switch from this 13-month over to a year to date. So I'm just going to click that. And now that is showing me my year to date for this year versus last year from January through July. You can see there on the top. You don't have those bottom metrics because those are actually metrics that are more month to month numbers. They really don't make sense for a yearly number. So we've just blanked that out for you. But you can see exactly what's been happening. And then you can also go back and change that time frame as well. And if I were to change here out of 2022, and let me just randomly pick something in 21, now it's also going to change those year-to-date numbers for me. So I'm looking at January through September of 21 versus Jan through September of 2020. So a ton of things you can do on this dashboard. I really love this one. We kind of refer to this one internally as the market on a page, because it really is almost everything you would need to know in most of your communications with people. Now, both of these that I just showed you, let's talk about this little circle underneath those on the member portal. It says double click to embed those in your website. So when you double click that, that's going to give you a PDF that you can open. And you actually have the ability to embed both of those and a couple of additional dashboards. So you all have your own websites that you try to drive your traffic to. You can actually put these on your site exactly like they did on that Gallatin Realtor site, and just make a page for it and pop it in there. And this PDF here has instructions on how to do it. It really is just a single line of code. Your website host, some will act a little bit differently. Some you just put in this code. Some of them make it a little more complicated, so it might vary based on your site. But from the Domus perspective, this is all you need for the information to tell your site, that's the dashboard I want to get. Now, since we already talked about the infographic and the review, I want to show you what these two other dashboards are that you can choose to embed in your site, because they are both really fun. The map in particular is really one of my favorites. It's super cool. I know you used to have a map on Gallatin Realtors that went to a PDF, but this one is fully interactive, so you don't have to click off of this if you don't want to. You've got all of your property types here on the side and those handful of metrics that you want to look at. So it defaults to median, but I can click on closed, and now it's going to show me the closed sales for the whole area here, all of your counties. And in the counties, I'm just hovering over here. You obviously know what all of these are, but you can see the name there pops up and see which one it is. And then if I click on one of these counties in particular, because remember, I'm looking at all listings, it says on my title. If I click on Gallatin, now it's going to change and show me Gallatin was at 105. Those numbers match. And I have that long history, that 10 years of what happened in Gallatin. And I'm just moving my mouse over here. And then I also have that comparison down below where it's showing me Gallatin versus all of those other counties. And I've got that tiny little blue line there that shows me which one I'm looking at. So for example, if I click on Madison, the chart down here stayed the same, but it moves that line to show me this is the one that I'm focusing on and looking at. So a lot of little ways to play with the data there. And I can see on the top, my title has changed. So it's showing me all the numbers down here are related to Madison. And when I want to go back to everything, I've got a button here for all counties. So that'll bring me back to that default. So the map is really fun. They're visual, they're easy for people to understand, and they can quickly zero in on the areas that they know and what's going on in there. So this one is one of them that you can embed. And then that last one that you have the option of is a more basic, higher level of the last 3-ish years of trend, with those handful of metrics as well on the top, and a couple of areas, the counties as well as the areas below. And you can put in the additional property types. On this one, if I put in condo, for example, now it's going to do that comparison. So a lot of ways that folks can use and see the data if you throw these in your website. So that's a benefit that your MLS has provided for you. So definitely take advantage of getting those out on your website. And these do update automatically, so you don't have to worry about going back and checking in. You'll see all of the updates come through. Your data is updated nightly. So if something gets entered today that was actually a closed sale in July, then it updates nightly, and tomorrow you will see that reflected in the data. So it is constantly the most current data that is available there for you. All right, let's go back to the member portal now. And weekly trends is the next one up, but I'm going to skip over that for right now because we're going to jump right into market insights. You could probably guess that weekly is going to be a weekly version of the larger market insights dashboard, which is one of our member dashboards, members only. So we're just going to bop right into that. And there we go. So the ones that we just went over are all considered public. They are higher level. They have less ways to slice and dice the data, and they don't have any access to underlying MLS listings. So that's what makes them public. This one is considered a member only one. So this one is not for sharing directly with your clients. If you're sitting in a meeting with somebody, absolutely bust this one out and start clicking through and demonstrating to them. You just can't share the links or anything with them directly, but you can print it out and share it or do one of those screen grabs that I showed you. So you still definitely have access to share this, just not in the interactive capacity. That's for you guys only. You want to keep this closer to yourself so that you're the one with all the power and ability to manipulate the data here. So you can see we've got this full tenure history again on here. And let's say you don't want to share that whole history. You're doing something and you just want to look at, well, what was it, a little bit before the pandemic. So maybe let's go back and start in 2019. So I'm just holding my mouse over here at this data point for January 2019. I'm going to click the regular button on my mouse, the left one, and hold it down and drag my mouse across the screen. And you can see it is now highlighted across there. And then I'm going to let go of that button. And now when I let it go, it just zooms into that smaller time period. So if you don't want to look at what happened in that full 10 years, this is a good way to zoom in on that. When I move my mouse over, it's a little bit easier to move and to see month by month what happened. So you might have an opportunity where you want to use this feature. That's a fun one. And when you're done with that, up in the top here, you see that little magnifying glass with the minus sign on it. We're all used to seeing those on our maps, right? With the pluses and the minuses on the maps. This works the same way. You're going to click that minus and it resets that zoom for you back to give you all the information. So I can see at the top here that I've got my single family residence in Gallatin County. That's where we've defaulted to. But maybe I want to look at some more property types. In this one, I've got that toggle switch that you've seen over in the top and it says show filters. So I can click on that and that's going to open up the filter panel. And you can see there's a ton of stuff on here. The other ones only had the property type in some areas. This one adds in construction type, your price range, your living area, year built, etc. So you have a lot of ways that you can look at the data here. And for this one, I'm going to throw in my condos and my townhomes, and then I will use that same toggle switch to hide that filter panel. Now, this is showing me the additive property of all of those property types that I just had in here. But if I want to compare those and break them out, right below the chart, you can see it says by property type. You're just going to click on that, and then that's going to break those out. So now I've got 3 separate lines, and I'm seeing that top one is going to be those single families compared to my condos and my townhomes. And over on the side here, my KPI box is showing me the aggregated median of all 3 of those together. So I can go back and break that out, and you'll see that this number here for July matches my little number that I'm hovering over on the line here. And then I also have those 2 comparisons that you're used to by now for that prior month as well as the prior year. Now this says prior period because there are several different time period options we can look at. So since I'm looking at a month right now, I know the prior period is meant to be the prior month. But say you're doing something and you need to do a quarterly analysis. If you're working with smaller data sets, for example, quarterly becomes more important. Right below here, I can see it's on by month, but I'm just going to click this and use by quarter. And now it's going to switch both my line and my KPIs to a quarterly analysis. And if I want to switch out those property types again, I can click on that and that'll give me those separate lines for the property types. So there's a lot of ways you can manipulate the data here. And then when I go to by year, right there next to by quarter, it's actually going to give me 2 additional options because depending on what story you're trying to tell, you might want to be talking about a year to date, or maybe you want to talk about an annual. So right now we are on year to date. So this is the median sales price for just January through July, since these stats go through July right now. And if I wanted to look at annual, Now it's going to show me for every prior year, the full year, compared to where we are right now. And that's a lot more interesting to look at when we go to a metric here. I clicked on the top because I saw that upside down triangle. So a metric like closed sales or any counting metric is a little more interesting when you're looking at year to date versus annual, because I can see where we are so far this year compared to where we were in each of the other years. So not doing too bad here. We're more than halfway through the year, and we can see how much we have to go if we were trying to meet those same numbers versus back on that year to date. Now we can see that. So this is just January through July again for each of those years. So lots of ways to look at this. Now I'm going to go back to no breakout. I had those several property types on here. But if I open back up my filter, we're going to knock out condo and townhouse for now. And if you wanted to look at a few of the different counties, I'll pick on Deer Lodge again, and maybe we'll add in Granite and hide my filter panel. Now I can also go back to my chart, and we'll go back and look at month because that's a little more interesting. And if I switch here underneath the chart to by major area, right now I'm looking at the closed sales for all three of those counties. But oops, nope, I'm looking at major area. Sorry, I didn't have county on here. So if I go back, take off Granite and Deer Lodge, so we just have those major areas in Gallatin. Now that's what that chart is showing me. These are all of those area breakdowns within Gallatin. Now, this chart, I like showing these when they have a lot of these comparisons to show you that you can do all of these. You probably wouldn't want to share a chart like this with your clients necessarily because it's a little bit messy, but I like using this for things like, I wonder where the highest selling areas and lowest selling areas are within a certain county. So by throwing them all in there, I can quickly see, well, it's within the city limits that we had the most. And down here at the bottom is going to be Park County. I'm glad this happened because now you're saying Park County isn't in Gallatin. What's up with that? Well, what's up with that is that it is a mismatched data in your listing somewhere. So we've been working very closely with Mike and the folks at CoreLogic to get a lot of this data corrected. And when it does get corrected in the listing, we will get that data flowing through and it will be updated. So when you see something like that, that's because we are just showing you back what is reflected in that data. So Park County eventually will probably be out of there. But if I look a little bit higher up and see some of these smaller areas, I'm hoping you're looking at these and going, oh yeah, that's in Gallatin. That makes more sense. So this is also a great way to find those individual listings that might need correcting because they were mismatched. You've also got the by minor area there, which is your numbers, obviously, or you've got the by resale versus new. So I can quickly switch this and see that most of the properties are actual resale properties, but you do have a handful of new that's down here. So you have a lot of different ways to go through and break out this data. And we're going to bust that back there. And let's take a look at our filter panel again. So I'm going to keep this on single family in Gallatin because that's obviously where most of your activity happens. And let's talk about these little slider filters. Now, all of these slider filters, you can see have a bottom range and a top range. And at the top, there's a little plus mark. That's because on here, we had to pick a value to put on there, but it doesn't mean you can't get information beyond these values. And that's why the little plus is there. So you don't forget that you have the ability to go past here. So how this would work is, let's say you are trying to do, I'll pick on living area for this one. You want an analysis for all of the properties, single family in Gallatin, that are at least 5,000 square feet or more. I'm just going to grab my mouse and drag this handle all the way over to the right side. And now I'm telling the system, just show me 5,000 square feet and more. And when I hide my filter panel, that's going to say, well, there's not that many. There were 2 of them that closed in July. And that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to make those numbers so high at the top end that you don't have a lot of analysis up there, but for the times you need it, you definitely need it. And this is where I'm going to show you now what I said before about this being a member-only dashboard because you have access to the underlying data, you might be sitting there saying, wow, I wonder what those two properties were. I'm going to double click on the number 2 right here. And it is a very quick double click. So if you don't get it the first time, change your speed. Make sure you don't have a mouse that's accidentally sort of moving when you are trying to click it, because that might throw you off a little bit. Once you figure it out, you'll know how to do it, but it does take a little bit of finessing. So I double clicked that, and that opened up the table here and showed me those two listings that were over 5,000 square feet. And there's a whole bunch of information on here. You can scroll over and see a lot about that. There is additional info that you probably don't care about or don't need at the end. We need a lot of stuff to make all this magic work underneath, so you can ignore a lot of that. But you can export this as well. It will export to an Excel that you can then go into and use. And if you need more information that's not in this drill through, this is our record of the data. So you will need to go into your actual MLS to get additional things that we might not have brought in here. If you want to get more details on the actual bedrooms and the sizing of those, for example, that will be in the MLS. It's not going to be in here because this isn't the actual link to the MLS at this point in time. So I'm going to close that. I clicked on the number when I showed you that, but I can also click on any one of these data points. Let me just zoom in here to make it a little easier for you to see. So over here, there was the 2. Maybe I'm interested in seeing, wow, back in October of 2020, we had 12 of those. Let me see what those were. And now I've got those listings underneath and can dig in a little bit more into that. But you can actually get into the data. You don't have to trust that the answer is correct. You can verify yourself. So that's a really cool feature there. We also have that on price distribution. So I'll show you here up at the top. We've been looking at time series, but when I click on price distribution, this is now going to break this out by price distribution. So I can see within my 5,000 or more square foot homes, one of them was in the 1 to 1.5 million and one was above that. I can double click on this bar as well. And then that's going to open that up for me. So depending on what you're trying to do, you can just click through and see that. And if I were to go back to my filter panel and I'm going to move my living area range down again, you may notice that nothing is happening. I'm dragging my mouse and it's not going anywhere. That's because it doesn't know which one of these handles I want to drag. Silly as it sounds, the system needs a little bit of help from you. So to get out of any of these analyses at the top end, just click anywhere on that line. And then it says, oh, you mean you want the left bar? I can drag that over for you. And it brought that back, and then you can drag it back to where you want. So as I dragged that living area bar over to the side there, you may have noticed underneath, all the rest of my price buckets came back because now I said, show me all of my closed sales in Gallatin. And now that gives you the full price distribution. So you have that as one of your choices there. And time series is the other one. And all of those slider filters work the same way. So you can do that with any of them. You can also drag them somewhere in the middle if you want. For example, if I bring this down here, it works in all of those ways. Now, the only thing I will mention with the sliders is that as soon as you use them, if the underlying data is not accurate or has something in it that doesn't fall within this range, then those listings will fall out. So that one more specifically is on year built. So for example, if a year built did not get filled in at all, maybe it was built in 2001 and for some reason it didn't get added in there and that field is null. As soon as I drag my filter over and say, hey, I wanted to see everything from 2000 and on, that house that was actually built in 2001, since I didn't know from the data when it was built, it will not be included in here. So that's just another little thing that, again, if it gets corrected, then we would eventually see it. But as soon as you're using filters, just be aware that you are excluding everything that doesn't specifically call this information out within the listing. And the year built one, since I'm on that, is also the only one that you'll see a minus sign here at the end. That's because you're probably not doing a whole lot of searching for, let me see the properties that were built in 1930. But if you did want to do that, you could do that same trick and drag that filter all the way over to the side on the left. And now I'm saying, show me everything built before 1950. And you can see there's also not very many, but they are still around there. So that's the only one because the rest of them are all bound by 0. So we didn't need to do that. Your built is unique in that way. Now, one more thing I want to show you here about my filter panel is down here, we've got this little question mark. And the question mark, whenever you see it, is going to take you to our support site. So that will bump you over here to what we call Domus University, and you can type in your questions here. So let's say, for example, you wanted to know about median versus average because people always, tell you they're, I like median, I like average. Well, that's on here. You can actually look it up. And some of these are going to be written out like this. Some of them will be little 2 and 3 minute videos. So as you're using the dashboards, if you have any questions, just click on that little question mark. If you're on the portal page over here, our owl down at the bottom also brings you over to Domus University, and then you can enter in your information. And then if you can't find an answer here, then absolutely you can ask the folks at the MLS, they might know, or you can actually submit a support request back on this same page. There's a little button there down to submit a ticket and say, hey, I have a question. And when we get questions like that, we try to answer them by creating an article in here, because if you have the question, then somebody else probably did as well. So you have a lot of resources available here. Now, this one, my page seemed to time out on me, which is awesome. I love it when this happens because then I get to share with you. These are all online dashboards. You cannot break them. When something weird happens, you just click your refresh button on your browser and it's going to reload for you. So as we're going through here, you're seeing me click on a lot of things and move my mouse around and do a lot of stuff. You should absolutely do that too. If you think maybe you can click on it and do something, do it. It's not going to hurt it. It's not going to break it. And you can just refresh if you get yourself into trouble. So just like I did here, you saw that was really simple, and now we're back to the start. So I previously skipped weekly trends. I'm going to go back to that one now because this is just a weekly version of that market monthly insights dashboard. Now, because it is weekly, we have less things on here. We're already dealing with a smaller data set, so we pared it down a bit. I've just got one full year of data week by week, obviously. And I've got my nice horizontal line that was on the market review dashboard that shows me where I am right now. And that compares to where I've been for the last year. So that nice visual cue. You've got that current week ending compared to the prior week, compared to the same week of the prior year. And the week ending for us, if you're doing the math in your head, the 13th was Saturday. So our week goes from Sunday through Saturday. And this is updated right away on Sunday. Obviously, these numbers change a little bit more on Tuesday mornings because you're probably not entering in your changes to your listing data on Sunday. You save that for Monday when you're back in the office, and then we get that update. So if you're sharing weekly numbers, I usually recommend waiting until Tuesday to get a more accurate picture, but it is still updating every day. Now I have the same metric list here in the middle that drops down and shows you all the metrics that are available. And I also have that same filter panel with the toggle switch over here on the top corner. And you can see this time we went back to just the areas and property type, but we still gave you that price range filter down here on the bottom. Because with stats, you want to try to include as much data as possible. I totally agree with search. You want to limit that down. You will know if your clients are looking for a 2-car garage or a 4-car garage and how many bathrooms they want and all sorts of things like that. And you should definitely limit that down as much as possible because they want what they want, right? But with stats, you don't want to limit down. You want to try to include everything. And that's where you get into, maybe 2 different counties have very similar economics. So you want to analyze them together. even if it doesn't necessarily make sense for your client to want to live in two different counties because they're far away from each other. They really want just the one. But if it's economically very similar, throw that in there because that'll give you a better picture of what happened. So that's why the weekly dashboard has less filters than the monthly. Because if you start getting down to just the bedrooms and the bathrooms and things like that, that's going to start limiting your analysis. And what I like to tell people is that the median price of 3 listings isn't economically valid. It's just the home that was in the middle of those 3 listings. So try to include as much as possible. And that's why weekly is just that weekly version. But it is a member dashboard. So I can do those same tricks where I double click on any of those data points and get to those listings and what was happening. So we've got one more dashboard to go over. That's my pricing insights dashboard on the end. Now, this one is also a member dashboard, and this one is a little bit different than what we've been looking at. We've been looking at aggregated statistics, but this one is, you'll notice the first one that doesn't give you an answer right away. There's no charts underneath. It's going to force you to make some choices. So I will pick on Gallatin and we'll just go ahead and hit the city limits. And I will click all of those minor areas. And I'm looking by default at those single family residences. And we've got active, closed, and pending listings. And I can see down here in the bottom corner, it tells me that there are 340 listings that make up this analysis. So that's a pretty good number. I'll go ahead and stick with that for right now. But I'm going to narrow down my price band a little just to make it easier to kind of look at and see this chart. So we'll shorten that. And I'm going to hide my filter panels. And let's talk about what this is showing me. So this is, as you might guess, related to pricing. Now, it's not a CMA, it's not an AVM, but it's very much meant to work in conjunction with those. And the idea is to help you and your clients get to the right price for a property sooner. So what this is showing us is, unlike the other ones where it was aggregated numbers, every single dot on here is an individual listing. And it's coded by status. I can see there's a lot of closed ones in here. Here's some active ones. There's some pendings are going to be in here as well. And if you noticed before, I defaulted it to about 6 months. So I can see here on the top, they're actually listings from February 1st to August 16th. And I can reduce that time frame or increase it as needed, but we'll leave this for now. And you can see I've got 2 black lines on the chart. Now that is dividing this chart into 4 different quadrants. So I can see here at the bottom, I've got the low price value listings. So that means that the homes that are down under these bars here, these are going to be probably my fixer-uppers, maybe my older homes. This is a great spot if you're an investor to have a home because you've got a lot of opportunity for that price to go up. So that's why we call this low price value listings. That's defined by the actual price. On the bottom, we've got our price, median sales price. Excuse me. And on the side here, we've got our dollar per square foot. So this is lower dollar per square foot, lower price overall. We like to use dollar per square foot as kind of a proxy for luxury. So down here, they're not quite as luxurious. Whereas when I turn above that line here, above my median dollar per square foot line, these homes are going to be a lot more luxurious. These are probably going to have granite countertops. Maybe they have some mature landscaping here. So a higher dollar per square foot, even if they aren't higher in overall price. So they were probably an older home that had some recent renovations done. You can see anything up here also still has some opportunity for some increase in values on those properties. Then all the way in the corner here, the top right corner, these are our high price luxury listings. So these are higher in price overall and higher in that dollar per square foot. So if I click on this guy up here at the top, I'm going to see him pop up right below that this is 423 South Tracy Avenue. And if you know that home, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh yeah, they did have, it was really big. It had a 6-car garage and it had all those fountains they put in or whatever. But that's, your higher dollar per square foot and cost more. There's going to be less room up there for appreciation, certainly in the near term. But these are also probably going to be move-in ready for folks. and you don't want to go in and do a whole bunch of renovations. So this is probably where you're going to be. And then our last quadrant down here is higher in price, but lower in dollar per square foot. Those are our high priced value listings. So maybe it's a bigger home that tends to sell for a little bit lower dollar per square foot. That could be it. Or it could also be a little bit older and maybe need a little bit of renovation. But you can see it breaks the market into these 4 quadrants defined by those sold prices, the price and the price per square foot. And now we get to the fun part, how you use this one. So I can see where the middle of my market is. And let's say I'm working with a seller and they've said, well, you know what, I'm ready to sell my house, but I think I want to go out at 1.1 million. Let's see if I got that. Oh, that was 11 million. Sorry. Let's take that off. 1.1 minus the 0. There we go. 1.1 million. And it's about that 2,000 square feet. So we'll just leave that on there. And now you can see these blue lines popped up on here. And what this is saying is this proposed listing would be right here in the market, because this is how buyers look at the market. They look at it in relation to everything else that's available to them. So comparatively, you want to know where you are. And then I can say, okay, Mr. Seller, you would be pretty close to this one that just closed on West Story. So let's take a look. Are you close to them? Are you a little bit nicer? Are you not quite as nice? Where do you fall in relation to these ones that are right around here? And my gauges here on the right tell me that that home would be higher than 73% of the listings in terms of price and higher than 92% in the dollar per square foot. So it better have, most of the work done. And I don't want to go in and have to install that lawn that I really want, or have to change to those granite countertops, because you're at the top end of that dollar per square foot. So this is where you can have those honest conversations with your sellers and say, this is where you are compared to everyone. Let's make sure that's realistic before we go to market. And you can also use this with your buyers. What we like to tell people is do one of these for every home you're going to show them. If you've got a buyer and you're taking them around to several houses, pop this in here and say, all right, now I'm going to show you a house that's selling for 900,000. And that one's closer down to the middle of the market. It's still in this top quadrant, but it's a better value than that other one. And then maybe if you want to spend a little bit less, you can, say, well, for $750,000, you're actually in the lower quadrant. So that might give you a good opportunity to have that appreciation that you're looking for in a home. So you can use this on both sides of the transaction, and it really just helps to clarify where those homes sit in relation to each other. So I actually recommend to folks, when you're doing open houses, this is one of the charts that you should offer. We love going to open houses. It's kind of like a hobby in our family. So we go to a lot of them. And I remember there was one time we walked into one and they handed me literally a 50-page packet of stats and information. And it was so overwhelming because I just wanted to see the house. I didn't want to go into all the numbers and things. And I'm the numbers girl. So for me to say, oh gosh, put those numbers away, it was a little bit surprising. But all I really wanted was to see the house. And then once people do that, just give them a little bit of what they need. Something like this that says, okay, this is where this house is related to everything else on the market right now. And then on the other side of a single piece of paper, you could throw on something like the market stats infographic and say, here's the overall area. This is what's going on. So they don't need a ton. They just want to get that high level. So we really love the pricing insights one for that. And with that, I've now shown you everything that you have access to with the Domus market stats. We went over from the simplest down at market infographic, talked about how you can embed a lot of these in your website and use them on social media, as well as talking about this pricing insights. And the next question I get is, well, which one should I use? And I go back to saying it really depends on what story you're trying to tell. So there's a couple of things. There's going to be, what do you need to share, right? If you need to share more about a certain market, maybe you want to focus in on that year built, you would obviously need to do the market insights because that's the only one that has that kind of a filter. But the other things to think about is, how comfortable are you with the stats? We really try to make stats accessible to everybody. I know it can be scary and it can be frustrating because you guys as realtors have, like I say, a mile wide and a foot deep. You have so many things that you need to know and be an expert in and have in your brain all the time to get these transactions done, that we've tried to make the stats easy and simple so you don't have to be frustrated by it, which is why we have several dashboards. So if you say, I really just like this market review, it's everything on one page there, I don't need any more, then that's fantastic. Just use this one and don't even worry about the rest, because you still will have that information to share with your clients and they will come back to you. And if you need to use more later, then you can. But, if this is your go-to, that's fantastic. We have a solution that works for you, and I'm glad for that. The other thing to think about is the clients that you're talking to. You're going to have some people that want all of the details. If I'm talking to, oddly enough, my 15-year-old, he wants all of the numbers and all of the details, and he just digs in, and everything you can give him, he just eats it up. But if I'm talking to my mom, for example, she doesn't really care. She just wants to know, "Oh, give me one number. What's the price? Okay, cool. That's all I need." So think about who you're talking to, because that could also guide you as to which one you want to go to. So as long as you find something in here that works for you, then we call that a success. And on that note, we love feedback. A lot of what you've seen in the product today has come about from other realtors and associations and folks that we've worked with. And a lot of it came from your MLS saying, "Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" So we love to make sure that we are always making the tools that you want and that you will use and that are useful for you. So if you're using these and you have a thought or an idea that you'd love to see in there, definitely get that back to your MLS. Let them know how we can make it more useful to you, because we are constantly evolving. That's one of the great benefits of having this as an online tool, is that we can just keep updating it and you just get the updates. They magically appear and you have new features. So we love doing that. Don't be shy about it. Definitely share your feedback, because that's how we make it better, and make sure you still enjoy using it and that it's useful and helpful in your business. So that is the end of our session today. I will turn off the recording and share that with your MLS so you have access to that later.